My name is Hannah, and my life changed forever when I was just 5 years old. That's when my sister, Julia, was born, and from that moment on, I felt invisible in my own home. My earliest memories are filled with Julia singing. By the time she was 3, she was the center of attention at every family gathering, while I stood in the background holding plates of snacks I'd help Mom prepare. Julia had the most beautiful voice, so sweet it made everyone stop and listen. My parents, Jackie and Ray, were convinced she'd be the next Mariah Carey. "Hannah, go help your sister practice her scales," Mom would say, without even looking up from her phone as she recorded another video of Julia performing. "And make sure you wash the dishes first," she'd add. When I was 8 and Julia was 4, while she danced around the living room in her pink tutu, I learned how to use the washing machine because Mom was too busy arranging Julia's singing lessons. One Thursday morning, when I was 14, I asked Mom why I couldn't go to Rebecca's birthday party. She sighed and looked at me impatiently. "Because Julia has a performance at the community center, and we need you to help with her costume changes," she replied. "But I promised Rebecca I'd go." I tried to argue. "Don't be selfish, Hannah," Dad interrupted. "Your sister needs you. She has real talent." He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he meant. Unlike me. Then came the day that changed everything. Julia was 12, and I was 16. She and her friends had gone to the mall unsupervised, something I was never allowed to do at her age. They spent hours at the ice cream parlor, eating Sunday after Sunday and competing to see who could finish the most. The next morning, Julia woke up with a sore throat. It quickly worsened, turning into a severe case of strep throat. It damaged her vocal cords, and the doctor said she might never sing again. I was in the kitchen doing homework when they returned from the hospital. "This is your fault," Mom screamed at me. "You're her older sister. You should have been watching her." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I made myself a promise. One day, I would build a life where I didn't have to live in anyone's shadow. I just had to survive a few more years in that house, where I felt like nothing more than a maid and everyone's scapegoat. The next 4 years blurred into a cycle of chores, blame, and silent resentment. Every time Julia got into trouble, whether it was sneaking out, skipping class, or using Mom's credit card without permission, somehow it always ended up being my fault. When my acceptance letter to State University arrived, I left it on the kitchen table during dinner, next to Mom's meatloaf. I chose that moment on purpose, so they couldn't avoid the conversation. "It's the most affordable option," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The tuition is reasonable." "We can't. You don't have the money," Dad said without even looking up from his plate. Julia smirked from her seat. "Maybe you should have tried harder to have actual talents instead of just doing chores all day." "I could take out a loan," I said, ignoring her comment. "I'll pay back every penny after I graduate and get a job. I promise. Please, this is important to me." Mom sighed, that long, weary sigh I'd heard 1,000 times. "Honey, we're not taking out any loans. College isn't for everyone. Why don't you look for a job at the mall? Or maybe at that new coffee shop downtown?" "But I got a scholarship," I replied, my voice cracking. "It covers part of the tuition. I just need help with the rest. I've researched everything, and I've budgeted." "Enough," Dad snapped, dropping his fork onto his plate with a clang. "We said no loans. End of discussion. Some people are meant for college, and some aren't. Accept it and move on." I stared at my untouched dinner as tears blurred my vision. I fought to keep them from falling. I saw Julia smiling, enjoying the drama, as always. That night, I called my best friend, Jen. We'd been close since middle school, united by our love of math and being the outsiders. Me because of my family, and her because her Italian immigrant parents owned the Golden Dragon restaurant downtown. "They won't help me," I sobbed into the phone. I couldn't even imagine how to get through it alone. All those years of excellent grades, doing everything right, and they didn't even care. Jen was silent for a moment before saying, "Come over tomorrow. My parents want to talk to you." The next evening, I sat in the Golden Dragon's office with Jen and her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Chun, after the restaurant had closed. They'd known me for years. I'd spent countless afternoons there doing homework and escaping the chaos of my home. "We've watched you, Hannah," Mrs. Chun said kindly. "You're like a second daughter to us." Jen must have told them everything because Mr. Chen nodded and said, "We'll pay your tuition." I started to object, but he raised a hand to stop me. "You'll work here part-time after your classes. Good pay, flexible hours. You'll pay us back little by little, no interest. This is an investment in your future." A few weeks later, I moved into my dorm at State College. My parents barely noticed when I packed, too busy planning Julia's grand piano recital, her latest attempt to find a new talent to replace her singing. I started classes during the day and worked nights at the Golden Dragon, learning everything from waiting tables to managing the restaurant's inventory. One random Sunday during my sophomore year, I got a call from my mom. I was in the library studying when I saw her number pop up on the screen. For a moment, I just stared at it, my heart racing. We hadn't spoken in months. "Hi, honey," she said, sounding distracted. There was noise in the background, probably Julia practicing something new. "Just calling to see what you've been up to." "I'm at college," I replied, waiting for her to ask how I was managing without their help or how I was paying for school. "Oh, that's nice," she said vaguely. "Julia is getting excellent grades in her advanced placement classes. We're so proud of her. She's really thriving, after the voice thing." She didn't ask any questions about me, how I was doing, how I was paying for school, nothing. And I didn't offer any details. The call ended as quickly as it had begun. Mom just hung up. My college years passed in this silence, building my own life while they focused on Julia. I only went home for major holidays, and each visit was the same. The same relatives gathered around the dining room table, laughing and chatting while Julia absorbed all the attention. My parents looked as proud as ever. I helped in the kitchen, listening from afar as everyone discussed Julia's latest accomplishments. But Thanksgiving during my junior year was different. I was preparing the sweet potato casserole when Aunt Sydney started asking about Julia's college plans. Mom replied proudly, "We've been saving for years. Our education fund for our little star is all set." They had set aside enough money for her to go anywhere she wanted. I almost dropped the casserole dish. The hot dish burned my hands through the oven mitts, but it didn't hurt as much as hearing the truth. 3 years ago, they told me they couldn't help me with college, and now I knew they'd had the money all along. It just wasn't for me. That night, I sat in my old bedroom, wrapped in my childhood blanket, and called Jen. "They had the money," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "They just didn't think I was worth it." "Then show them they were wrong," Jen said firmly. "You already are." She was right. From that moment on, I doubled down on my studies and my work at the Golden Dragon. By the time I graduated, I had not only paid back every penny I owed the Chens, but also learned everything about running a successful business. I worked hard, moving up from waitress to shift supervisor and finally to systems manager, all while maintaining a 4.5 GPA. On my last day at the restaurant, Mr. Chen called me into his office. "I have a friend at Morgan Chase Corporate," he said, sliding a business card across the desk. "He told me they need someone smart and hardworking, someone like you." I told him about how you improved our inventory system and increased efficiency by 40%. He's very interested. A week after graduation, I walked into my new office at Morgan Chase, wearing a suit I bought with my own money. On my desk sat a nameplate, Caroline Michi, Junior Analyst. Within 7 months, I was leading my own team. By the end of my first year, I'd been promoted twice and was managing projects that had caught the attention of senior management. When Christmas rolled around, something felt different as I pulled up to my parents' house. The house was dark except for a single light in the living room window. There were no cars in the driveway, none of the usual Christmas decorations. Mom opened the door, wearing an old sweater instead of her usual festive attire. "Julia's not coming," she said quietly. I stepped inside the unusually quiet house, a sense of unease settling over me. The familiar smell of Mom's Christmas roast was gone. "Where is Julia?" I asked. "She's celebrating with friends," Mom replied, wringing her hands. Her friends rented a cabin in the mountains. Very exclusive. I glanced at the dining room table. It was normally laden with Mom's Christmas feast, but now there was just a store-bought ham and a few microwave side dishes. The house was silent. No relatives, no Christmas music. Dad sat slumped in his armchair, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "We've had a few setbacks," Mom admitted finally, her voice low. She glanced at Dad, who shifted uncomfortably. The investment your father made didn't work out, Mom said. We had to take out loans to cover the losses. A big family Christmas wasn't in the budget this year. I watched them pick at their meager meal. These were the same people who had once seemed so powerful, controlling every aspect of my life. Now, they looked small, defeated. Despite everything, something stirred within me. Sympathy, maybe, or just old habits. Give me a minute, I said, pulling out my phone. I scrolled through delivery apps, grateful for the restaurants that stayed open on Christmas. 30 minutes and several hundred pesos later, I had ordered a feast. Prime rib, glazed ham, truffle mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and 3 kinds of pie. When the food arrived, the rich aromas filled the house. We sat down to eat, and I noticed Mom glancing at my designer watch and the silk blouse I was wearing, both more expensive than their monthly utility bills. We've been thinking. Mom began carefully, sharing a look with Dad. Since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help us out? Just temporarily, until we get back on our feet. I studied them over the rim of my wine glass. Part of me wanted to remind them of what they'd said when I asked for help with college. Some people are meant for college, and some aren't. But looking at their tired faces, I couldn't bring myself to say it. I could set up a supplementary card on my account, I said slowly, with a monthly limit. Mom's eyes widened eagerly. Oh, honey, that would be 2,000 pesos a month. 2,000 pesos a month, I replied firmly. No more. They nodded enthusiastically. It was more than they expected, though for me it was less than a week's salary. A few days later, I ordered the card, activated it, and sent it to Mom. They promised to use it responsibly, only for basic necessities. For the next few months, they kept their word. The charges were reasonable: groceries, utilities, the occasional dinner out. Normal things. Expected things. I even started to feel like maybe this financial arrangement was mending our broken relationship. Then it all came crashing down. I saw an Instagram post. It was a picture of Julia, her engagement ring sparkling, on a beautiful beach with the caption, "Paradise." Another picture showed her and Francis, our parents beside them, all smiling. Francis's mom wore a designer sundress, and his dad stood proudly beside him, hand on his shoulder. My fingers stopped mid-scroll. When had this happened? Why hadn't they told me? The next post made my stomach clench. It read, "So grateful to Mom and Dad for making this magical engagement trip possible for everyone. Francis insisted on inviting both families for this dream vacation. Best parents ever. Hashtag sponsored by the Sparkling Arts." My brain clicked. Heart pounding, I opened my banking app with trembling hands. There they were, the charges far beyond the monthly limit I'd set. 7 round-trip, first-class tickets to the Florida Keys. 15,400 pesos. Grua Resort, 3 ocean view suites for 7 nights. 20,600. Welcome dinner at Morodo, 3,200. Capers Spa Treatments, 2,300 pesos. Sunset Catamaran Cruise, 2,500 pesos. Private beachfront dinner, 4,200 pesos. They had used my money to fund their secret family vacation. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. They had orchestrated an engagement party for Julia and her future in-laws, a celebration to which I wasn't even invited, while using my money to pay for it. My hands were shaking so badly, it took me 3 tries to dial Mom's number. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. Hello. Mom's voice sounded casual and breezy. In the background, I could hear music, the sound of waves, glasses clinking, and laughter. Julia's distinctive laugh rose above it all. "Where are you?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and steady, the same tone I used in tense work meetings. "Oh, honey," Mom hesitated. The music got quieter, as if she was moving away from the party. "Your father and I just needed a little break, to unwind. Things have been so stressful lately." I opened my banking app again, staring at the transactions. My free hand clenched into a fist. At the Grua Resort, with Julia, Francis, and his entire family. That kind of break costs upwards of 55,000 pesos. There was silence, then muffled voices. I could hear her trying to cover the phone, but snippets of conversation slipped through. "She knows, maybe I should." I took a deep breath. My grip on the phone tightened. Mom, why did you use my card to pay for everyone's trip? And why wasn't I invited to my own sister's engagement party? More muffled voices, followed by the sound of the phone changing hands. When the new voice came on the line, it was Julia. Her words were sharp, laced with contempt. Listen, Miss Executive, she sneered. You're not needed here. You're nothing more than a walking ATM. We don't want you here ruining everything with your little success story. No one cares about your precious career while we're celebrating my engagement. Her words stung, but I held my ground. That ATM just paid $25,000 for your party, another $25,000 for the flights and extras. That's my money funding your perfect family moment. Julia let out a cold, harsh laugh. Well, that's what you're good for, isn't it? Keep working your fancy job, and we'll keep spending your money. It's the only thing you're useful for. Anyway, always have been, even when we were kids. At least now you're finally serving a purpose. The line went dead. I called immediately. First Mom straight to voicemail. Then Dad, same result. I tried Julia's number. It rang once before going to voicemail. She'd rejected the call. Within minutes, the notifications flooded my phone, one after another. Family members blocking me on every social media platform. Mom and Dad's profiles disappeared first, followed by Julia's. A single text message from Mom arrived before she blocked my number. We're all tired of your attitude and your jealousy. Leave us alone. You've ruined enough special moments for Julia. I stared at the message, something cold and hard settling in my chest. My hands were steady now as I opened the banking app. This time, I went straight to the travel booking section. Each click felt like breaking a chain that had held me bound to their toxic behavior for far too long. Hotel reservations for 3 luxury ocean view suites, canceled. Massage packages and sunset catamaran cruises, canceled. Private beachfront dinners, canceled. Round-trip, first-class airline tickets for 7 people, canceled. Mom's card, canceled. Deactivated. Permanently. I set down my phone and waited, picturing their reactions. The hotel informing them their rooms weren't paid for. Their embarrassment when they tried to charge something to the room and were declined. The panic when they realized their return flights no longer existed. For hours, my phone lit up like fireworks, call after call, message after message. Mom, Dad, Julia. Unknown numbers with Florida area codes, probably Francis's. The text messages poured in. Mom? Hannah, please call us back immediately. This is an emergency. Dad, fix this now. You're embarrassing the whole family. Julia, you better fix this or I swear to God. Unknown number. Francis, my parents are furious. You need to reinstate those reservations. As the hours ticked by, the tone of the messages shifted. Mom, honey, please, can we talk about this? Dad, we'll pay you back. Just help us out here. Julia, come on, Hannah. It's my engagement. Don't be so petty. Francis, my parents are threatening to cancel everything. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I left their messages unread and methodically blocked every number and account they used to contact me. But not before taking screenshots of everything. Proof. I had a feeling those screenshots would come in handy. Around midnight, a notification popped up. Julia Michi posted a new status. Her post read, I can't believe my own sister would try to ruin the happiest moment of my life. She's always been jealous of my happiness, but this is a new low. Canceling our entire family vacation out of spite? Who does that to their own sister's engagement celebration? Some people just can't stand to see others happy. Hashtag toxic family, hashtag brokenhearted. The comments rolled in instantly. OMG, that's horrible. What kind of sister does that? I always knew there was something off about her. She's just jealous because you're getting married first. Your poor parents must be so embarrassed. I was quiet for a moment. Then my fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed my reply. Let me share what really happened. My parents were using my credit card for basic expenses, limited to 2,000 pesos a month. Yesterday, I discovered they spent over 55,000 pesos of MY money to fund a luxury vacation to Florida for Julia's engagement. They didn't ask me, they didn't tell me, and they didn't invite me. When I called to ask, Julia told me I wasn't family, just a walking ATM. My mother's last message before blocking my number was, "We're all tired of you." So yes, I canceled the reservations I never authorized, the reservations I never agreed to pay for. I stopped funding the vacation I wasn't welcome on. Here are the screenshots of every message. Here are the credit card statements. This is the truth about your poor Julia and her ruined engagement party. You judge who is really the toxic one. Then I attached every screenshot and piece of proof. The tide turned immediately. The commentary went from outrage towards me to outrage towards Julia. OMG, Julia. How could you use your sister's money and exclude her like that? That's cruel. Your family planned a vacation and didn't even invite her? That's messed up. Hannah, you did the right thing. Stay strong. Poor Frances, caught in this family drama. The fallout was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Through mutual friends and social media, I pieced together what happened next. I had caused chaos in Florida. My parents had to borrow money from 4 different friends just to afford economy flights home. They were forced to leave the Grand Grua Resort in front of all the other guests. Julia, as expected, threw a massive tantrum in the lobby, and someone recorded the whole scene on TikTok. The explosion came when the Franceses realized they would have to pay for their own accommodations. They had been promised a fully paid luxury vacation, only to discover they'd been dragged into my family's lies. "We trusted you," Mrs. Francis shrieked. "Your mother, by the pool, said, you said you were taking care of everything. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" Julia, true to form, made it worse. "Oh, stop being such greedy beggars," she yelled back. "If you can't afford a few nights in Florida, maybe your son isn't good enough for our family after all." Francis stood there, stunned, before finally speaking. "You're right about one thing," he said quietly. "Someone isn't good enough for someone's family." Then he took the engagement ring off Julia's finger and walked away with his parents. Just like that, the engagement was over. Julia's dream wedding was canceled before it even began, all because they couldn't resist stealing from me one last time. A week after they returned home, the knocking started. "Hannah, honey, please open the door." Mom's voice trembled from the other side of my apartment door. "We need to talk. We know we messed up. Just give us a chance to explain," Dad added. I sat on my couch, unmoving, barely breathing. The TV was muted, but its blue light flickered across my face as they continued to plead. The knocking went on for 20 minutes before they finally gave up. Later, I learned they tried to convince the building manager to let them in, claiming it was an emergency. He called me to check, and I told him not to let them in. Again, that night, Jen came over with takeout from the Golden Dragon. We sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Your post got shared in some family trauma support groups," she said, biting into her noodles. "A lot of people are calling you a hero for standing up to toxic family members and setting boundaries." I thought about all the years I spent trying to earn their love, waiting for their approval. For the first time, I realized I didn't need it. I didn't need them to feel whole. I finally understood that I was worth something, not because of all the money I'd given them, hoping they'd see me as family instead of just someone to use. "You know what's funny?" I said, watching a plane disappear into the night sky. "For the first time in my life, I don't care what they think of me. I don't care if they're sorry. I don't care if they change. I'm just done." Sometimes the hardest part of growing up isn't learning to stand on your own 2 feet, but knowing when to walk away. I'd spent my whole life in Julia's shadow. Now it was time to step into the light.